Hello and welcome to Handmade Chelsea Online, to one of our exhibitor live sessions. I'm Alice and I'm part of the Handmade in Britain team. You've joined our session today with Michele White, whose topic is the making of a tree. And so we join her right now in her gallery. So I'm now going to share the screen and Michele will take it away. But in the meantime, please remember this is an interactive session. So if you do have any questions for Michele, please do use our chat function, which you scroll at the bottom and click chat, and you can ask questions. You can ask questions throughout our live talk that we have. So over to you, Michele. Welcome.
Thank you very much. As Alice said, I am a designer jeweller. I've been making jewellery in Birmingham for very nearly 40 years. And I'm here in my gallery in the Jewellery Quarter in Birmingham. I'm going to tell you about a particular piece that I have with me that I have made. And I will be giving you some examples as I go along of how I do that. Why is it like that? Oh, do you want to first of all, I want to show you the actual piece. This is the piece that I'm going to be talking about. And as you can see, it's quite complicated. It's made up of quite a lot of different elements. But before I start with that, I just want to show you, can we have the first? Yeah. How I begin. I start with the drawing. So what I do is I have a gemstone. In this case, it is an opal. It's rather a nice opal. And it has, the bottom half is green and the top half is blue. And that always gives me the idea that I want to do a little seascape. So this is how I start. I put the stone down on my sketchbook. I draw around the stone and then I start drawing out from the stone. And almost always I do exactly what my original drawing is. So I start making that right from the beginning. This is silver, it's got 18 karat gold on it, it's got a diamond, which is the sun up in the sky. But the piece I'm going to talk to you about is the piece that I showed you at the beginning. And the stimulus for that piece really was the piece of fossilized wood that, that I bought only recently before I made the piece. And that gave me the idea that I wanted to do something that had, well, houses and a fence and grass and all those sort of things in it. And this is how I start when I'm making a tree, which is after all the title of my talk. So I start with my drawing of a tree. And the tree might be a tree that I know quite well, a local tree that I've drawn, possibly a tree in my garden, or it could be a tree that is from a photograph in the magazine. And I always use real trees because I think that's the only way of making my final piece look like a tree. So I start off with this drawing, and as you can see, I have I've got the trunk and the branches, and amongst the branches are the groups of leaves, and all the groups of leaves have numbers on them, so that when I get to cutting them out eventually from my sheet of silver, I will know where each one is going to go. So the first stage is to turn my pieces of wire into the shapes that I'm going to want them to be to make the trunk and the branches. And those are then glued onto a back plate of silver. In this case, it's silver. Sometimes it could be gold if I'm feeling particularly flush. And once they're glued on, I have to wait for the glue to dry. When the glue is dry, I can't do it before the glue is dry, because once I put the heat on, if the glue is still wet, it will start to bubble and the pieces will move. So once the glue is dry, I get my flame, which I get a big fluffy flame, which is going to give me the heat to melt the surface of the silver, which is what I need to do. I need to melt the surface of the silver so that those pieces of wire just fall into place. And when I take the heat out, they will be fused onto the back plate. So I make my bunches of leaves. So this is actually a different tree, but it has exactly the same technique of making it. So I have got my here. I've got my pieces of silver cut out with the numbers on the pieces of silver, so that I know from my drawing exactly where they're going to go. Of the piece that I showed you at the beginning, which is going to be the finished piece. And this isn't going to be a brooch. This is too big, in my opinion, to be worn as a brooch. So this is going to be in a frame, fixed in a frame, so that it's a little picture which can go on the wall or can stand on a table or something. And what I've done here, you can see where I have fused the wire that is in the top left-hand side, which is the clouds, which I often have in my pictures. And at the bottom, there is the small pieces of wire which have been fused on, which are the grass. And on the right-hand side, in that triangle, there is what will end up being a little bush. So that's now got the clouds at the top, the grass at the bottom, and I've also got the grass ready at the side to be fused on. So we're at that sort of stage at the moment. Now, those two little houses are houses that I made when I was just starting out. And I was trying different ways of fusing the wire onto the back plate of silver. And I made those two little houses. And then I didn't have anything to do with them, because I don't usually do pieces like this. So I put them away in a box, and as often happens, when I suddenly this piece of fossilized wood, which you can see looking rather pretty on there because it's got these little crystals on the surface. And I thought, goodness, I wonder where I put those houses. So I looked through all my things that I've got in my workshop, and I found them, and they fitted exactly into what I wanted to do. And in front of those houses, you can see another section, which is a separate section and has grass, little pieces of wire fused on to make grass. And this is now with the pieces all ready to put into position. So the green stone that you can see there is chrysoprase. Chrysoprase is a type of agate. It's always that colour green. And I thought that was going to make quite a nice piece of grass, which is going to go in between the house, the wider house, and the tree. So it's going to be a little bit of garden on the other side of the house. And you can see there how nicely that house fits into the 90-degree angle in the piece of fossilized wood. That was the shape of that piece when I bought it. So this is how my designs come together, really, that the design depends on the stone that I'm using. And the tree there You can see that's all been fused and soldered on. So the pieces of leaves are not fused on. They have been made by fusing little pieces of silver onto the shapes, but they have to be soldered onto the tree because large pieces, if I try and fuse those, I get air bubbles underneath. And so that is something that can't be done. So that now is ready for me to cut out the spaces in between the branches. And that is going to make it look much more like a tree. And that's how it's all going to fit together. That's again is on my sketchbook, which you can see. I have a very busy sketchbook. I don't necessarily make all the things that are on there, but quite often I will come back to something if I find a stone that is suitable or something that seems to me to fit in with something I've done in the past. So again, this is with it on the back plate on my peg. Peg is what jewellers use to work on when they are sawing and filing and buffing things up. So we always work on a peg which stands out from our curved bench. You might know what that looks like. Now this picture shows how I put spacers on the back of silver pieces, so that when the piece is all put together at the end, it will have all sorts of different layers. So the different layers make it look much more like a landscape. It's not at all flat. It's quite, each piece stands out from the piece next to it. Now, all those pieces have been cleaned up, and you can see now that the spaces have been cut out between the groups of leaves, and that I have grass on the right-hand side, grass in front of the houses, grass underneath the fence, and you can see my clouds in the sky. This is just another shot of the same thing. And here is an almost final stage. Oh, one of the things I didn't say is that everything has to be completely finished before the pieces are put together. So I make rivets, and I fix the rivets so that I will be able to fix each piece when I put it together. And those pieces now have all been oxidized. The roofs of the houses, the grass in front, and the clouds have all been oxidized. And the claws have been put over the stones, and that is all ready. So can we remove all that now? And this is, again, this is the finished piece which I showed you at the beginning. Obviously, it's the other way around because this is a screen. But you can see all the pieces. You can see the sparkly piece of fence. You can see the chrysoprase, and you can see how it was all put together. And I also want to show you another one of my trees. This tree actually is on my site. And this is an abutilon tree. It doesn't have a stone, but this is the sort of tree that apparently grows in Canada near the coast, and is made in exactly the same way as I have made the one that I've just shown you. So there we are. I don't know if we've got any questions.
No, thank you, Michelle. I really feel personally that your work is very ethereal to me. So it's really lovely to see that you kind of start with a stone and then build your pieces. And of course, you're with the houses, you're not building, you know, the piece all at once. You're kind of taking pieces that perhaps you've made at other times that perhaps don't work correctly at that time, but actually can fit in far better. Does that happen quite a lot within your collection? Because of course it's not just your brooches. I can see, you know, within your collection you've got your rings, some of whom I've just spotted on your fingers. Does that kind of adding pieces or kind of inspiration from different pieces work within your collection throughout?
It doesn't happen very much, actually. It just happens to be fortuitous that there just are particular occasions when I find that there are pieces that I've done in the past that are suitable. And actually, I won a prize many years ago for a piece that I put in for an exhibition. And I had discarded that piece right early on when I was making it and thought that it wasn't really what I wanted to do. But I came back to it and finished it, and I won a prize for it, so of £1,000 actually. So it does happen very occasionally, but not very often.
Sorry, you gave away some of your techniques a little earlier, and the one that's intrigued me the most is, what's a fluffy flame?
Oh, well, I use two different flames. So I have a flame that uses hydrogen, and that makes a very tiny, very hot flame, which I will use when for example, if I'm putting new tips on a diamond ring. That's the sort of flame I would use, because on the claws of a diamond ring, because that gives me a very local, very hot heat. A fluffy flame, I have another torch which uses gas. It uses town gas and air, and that I can make that into a very hot blue flame by putting a lot of air into the gas flame, and that makes a hot blue flame. But if I do it with a large flame of gas and not quite as much air, then I get a flame that is that has quite what I call a fluffy end. So it's very difficult to explain. I have a video which I took of me making something with that flame, so I could put it on the site if anyone's interested. But it does show you how this is a flame that has a very fluffy red end that gives me just the right sort of heat that I want to melt my silver surface and not melt the whole piece of silver.
No, thank you. I've learned something new this morning, but I can't help spying your necklace. Now, is that a piece within the collection? Because it sits beautifully. Do you often put pieces of work and actually sit them on yourself when you're making?
I always
do.
I always wear my own jewellery when I'm making it, so that I know that it sits exactly how I want it to.
Well, that's really, so important. So we know that everything on there should sit flat. If it was going to be me, if it was going to be a friend, or if I was to gift it, it would sit really nicely. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Sometimes I have to put extra leaves in.
I think I might be an extra leaf person.
It still should sit like that.
I think a final question that I've had, which is obviously your fascination with trees and with bushes. That we've spoken about, is that something that's always been very important to you, and is that why it plays such a big part within your collection?
I don't know that it's always been very important to me. I was brought up in London in a place where my husband said there weren't any trees. I don't think that's quite true, but there certainly weren't as many as there are around me now. And actually, I've built my garden over the last 40 years, and I've put many trees into my garden, although it's not that big. I think they were more important to me than I knew when I started 40 years ago, because I was already making pieces. When I was at college, I made my first piece with a tree in it, and that was a tree in my neighbour's garden that I could see from the bedroom window. So I think they have always been important, but they've become more important as I've been working over the years. And especially ginkgo trees. I have 4 ginkgo trees in my front garden now. They're all still small, so I don't know what's going
I was going to say, I hope they're not bare. I hope you're not kind of pulling off a leaf every time to then, you know, use it for a close-up or a drawing.
That's how I started with ginkgos, because when I used to walk my children to school, I passed a ginkgo tree, and of course at this time of year all the leaves are coming down, and so I started collecting them, and that was why I made my first ginkgo.
Kind of 4. Well, it's beautiful. Well, we're just coming to the end, Michele, but I'd like to say thank you very much for your time with us. I've certainly thoroughly enjoyed, you know, learning more about your process. It's really made your work come alive, because I can really see what really goes into making your pieces. It's not just kind of putting things together, a lot of work, and that's certainly come across. Can we have a look at that piece one more time before we say goodbye, just to everyone? And that's just beautiful. Look at that. Really, really wonderful. So again, I'll just say thank you very much to Michele, and thank you to all of our participants. We haven't been able to get through all of your questions, but Michele is available over on our live chat over the coming 5 days, so do pop into her box, and the next time she's online she'll be able to answer some of your questions. So once again, Michele, thank you very much. And who's your helper that we've been seeing behind the screen? Is that Mimi? Oh, a big round of applause to Mimi. Thank you. Well, nice to see you, Mimi. Thank you.
It's my right hand. I have to
Oh, that's so nice to hear. Right, I'm going to say
do it without her.
Oh, bless. Right, well, on that note, thank you so much once again, Michele, for your time this morning. And remember, you can go over to Michele's shop page, so please just pop on to the website and go search for Michele in our exhibitors, and you can find her profile and her full listing of pieces for work.